How to invest in assisted senior living centers. That's today's show. Let's dive into it. Here we are at our very first rental property. Hey everyone, I'm Clayton Morris, longtime real estate investor. A number of years ago, left my day job thanks to passive income and buy and hold real estate. If you're new to the show, that's what we focus on here, is buy and hold real estate. And we talk about commercial, we talk about single family, we've talked about mobile home parks and the hundreds of episodes that we've done. You know what? We've never talked about assisted living centers before. And we've got the expert on today to talk all about it. His name is Gene Guarino. He's the founder and the CEO of Residential Assisted Living Academy, America's leading expert on residential assisted living. Gene, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Clayton. Appreciate you having me on, and thanks for being here today yourself. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. So educate us. Treat me like I'm a 5-year-old, and I do not understand the first thing about assisted living centers. I mean, growing up, my grandmother lived with us, and then she moved out when we got a little bit older, and I guess we needed the space in the house, and she moved into an assisted living facility not too far away from us. It was a great facility. They had bingo night, they had meals, they had nice rooms, and we would go see her in there. Is that what we're talking about here? I'd be investing in that type of a facility?
We do it a little bit differently. So we take a single family home and convert it into this assisted living home. So take a single family home in a neighborhood, 4,000 square feet, so bigger than normal. And you might have 5, 10, 15 of those seniors living in that home. So it's not medical, it's not doctors, nurses, and gurneys, but it is 24-hour care, and their activities of daily living, their assistance is being taken care of in that home-like setting. So it's an actual home, not a hotel that's converted into. And it's a handful of people, 5, 10, 15 seniors in that home.
And we should mention that if people want to go through your course and your training and to learn how to do this, I'm going to be taking the training. We have a special link set up for everyone to take advantage of this. If they want to go to morrisinvest.com/RAL, Residential Assisted Living, RAL. So just go to that link and you can sign up for your live training, which will walk you through that. Tell us, first of all, what does that live training do? And what do you teach people to do when they go and visit that link?
Yeah, when they go to that link, actually, you have an option of getting a download of our latest book, The Insider's Guide to Investing in Senior Housing. There's a webinar there you can watch. So it's a way to learn more about this. It's not our 3-day training that we do, but when we do our 3-day training, we walk people through the real estate aspect, what to look for, the location, how to renovate, what to do, what not to do. And location is critical to the success of this business. Then we talk about the business aspect of it. What does it mean to open and operate this business itself? And then we can talk about operations. So during that 3-day training, it's very complete. Take somebody all the way from the very beginning if they've never done this before or not.
That's great. Okay, I want to dive into some details because I think this is exciting. I've heard rumblings about this from different investors that I work with over the years about turning single-family homes into residential assisted living facilities. Why would I want to do that? Why would I want to take one of my rental properties, a single family, and convert it into a residential assisted living center?
Well, the bottom line for most people who are listening, it's the money. So when I say $10,000 a month in net income from the one single family home, that's what this means. You can make 15 or 20, and it just depends on the home and the area and so on. But it's really a cash flow opportunity. We all know that real estate has cycles. It goes up and down. Right now, as I travel across the country, 50 cities this year in 5 countries, the bottom line is that I think real estate is getting to the top of the current cycle, and there'll be some kind of leveling off, if not coming down at some point. But the cash flow is really the key. So the real estate is a play, and we need to own or control that real estate. And on the other side, you have the business in this case, where we have what we call the silver tsunami. So the silver tsunami of seniors that are coming, aging, needing that care, needing that home. $4,000 per month is the average that somebody pays to be in assisted living. So if you take 10 people in that home, gross income of $40,000 a month, and your net profit from that is 20 to 30% of that 40,000, that's what we mean that you can be netting that $10,000 a month from a single family home.
That's amazing. Okay, I want to dive into some more details on this because I'm getting excited, the prospects of this. Let's talk about the structure itself, the property itself, and then I want to talk about the regulations because I'm sure the government is knee deep in this. I don't know if it's state to state or at the federal level. We'll get to that in a second. But first, let's talk about the structure. So if I'm listening to this for the first time, I'm thinking about buying a property that would meet the standard and the requirements in order to do this. What would be a minimum that you would tell your students? You got to find a property that's 5 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, 2,100 square feet. Take us through some of that stuff.
So step one of the 10 steps is location. So frankly, it almost doesn't matter what the property is, it's the location of. And what I'm looking for is the demographics. The proper demographics would be me, 50, 60 years old. Your parents are 80, 90 years old, upper income, not top of the top, cream of the crop, but certainly not low level in a bad area. So you want people that are able to pay for the care for mom and dad, not government pay, not Medicare, not Medicaid. That's not what we focus on. So private pay in an upper income area in the location where there's lots of people like that around it. So location is number one. Now, if I were to look for the house in the right location, I start with the 3-3-3 rule, 3,000 square feet, 3 bedroom, 3 bath home, just as a starting point. The bathrooms are actually more important than the bedrooms, because we can convert a space into multiple bedrooms, but adding plumbing is a bigger issue. You only need to have 2 bathrooms in the house from a legal standpoint, from rules and regs, but the more bathrooms you have, the better. So my homes are 4, 5, 6,000 square feet, and they have 6, 7, 10 bathrooms in them. We added those bathrooms. We converted space into bedrooms. So you're not going to find a 10 bedroom, 10 bath house. That's not for real. You're going to find a bigger house in the right location. You're going to convert space and potentially add bathrooms.
Okay. What is the cost? What am I looking at for a cost? Because if I buy a property, typical properties I buy are anywhere from $60,000 to $100,000. That's what I'm pretty much spending on my single families that I like to buy in my portfolio. The properties you and I were talking before the show that I was just at today, I think I was all in at about $75,000. They're about 1,000 square feet. That's kind of what I buy. Mm-hmm. What are we looking at in cost? Like $300,000 for a single family house here, $200,000, or does it matter?
So I'm going to ask you a question before I go. In a house like that, when you're all in, what is the net profit on a monthly basis? What are you looking at for positive cash flow typically?
You're going to really kick me right here in the shins, because honestly, normally I try to go between 8 and 12, 13% net return on investment on a property. So let me just give you a ballpark. So if I'm all in at 60,000 on a property, might be cash flowing 800-900 a month. So I'm looking at, anywhere from like 9, 10, 11, 12% net return if I'm taking out 40% for expenses, repairs, taxes, etc. So now I know you're going to probably triple that amount with the square footage that you're dealing with, right?
Yeah, but is there debt service in that calculation, that 12%? Is it $100 a month? Is it $200 a month after debt service?
Right. I mean, in that calculation, it's just cash. So that's a straight cash example.
All right. So, and the reason why I wanted to say that, because I am going to talk about a very different property. So instead of a 3.2, 1,800 square foot basic average home in the average area, I want you to be thinking a bigger home in a nicer area. So maybe 3, 4, 5,000 square feet. It may be $1 million home. And by the way, prices are very different all across the country. So $1 million in California gets you a garage with a loft, and $1 million in Mississippi, you're the governor, right? You own the mansion. So it's very different. So the home itself, whatever's average in your area, whether it's 80,000 or 300,000 or $1 million, it's going to be that and a little higher. It's going to be bigger and nicer. What I really want people to think about is the income, the potential money that you can make, not what it costs for that property. The property itself, you're going to do things to that home that you wouldn't do in a normal rental home. So you might have things like, let's take the carpets out, because that's a trip hazard. That's something that absorbs liquid. So we're going to put down tile or linoleum or hardwood or something where it's easy to clean, easy to maintain, and not a trip hazard. We might widen doors to 36-inch because we can move furniture, walkers, wheelchairs, anything, as opposed to just a narrow doorway. We may get rid of no sunken living rooms, right? One little step, that can be a real problem for a senior. The idea, not a step, as much as it is just going from room to room. So we don't want all kinds of level changes. Single level is better than multi-level, but all across the country, a lot of the inventory is actually 2- and 3-story homes used for senior houses helps. But you're going to do some things to that home that you wouldn't do with your normal rental property. Some of those things, if you did them, wouldn't translate to a rental property. Things like smoke detectors that are hardwired throughout the home. You may need to do fire suppression or sprinklers within that. Each one of those has a cost and expense. And when you do that, that's going to be used as a group home of some kind, probably indefinitely. It's not going to be rented out to a family or be sold back to a family. It's going to be used for this very profitable niche of group housing, and in this case, senior housing.
Interesting. All right. So, because down the street from me, we live in an affluent neighborhood, and down the street from me, there is a facility like this. I see a van pull up on a regular basis, and there's a lot of activity at that particular house. But it's a normal single family house. I can imagine that it's structured similarly. So now we're setting up these different bedrooms. We're setting up these different bathrooms. We're widening doorways. We're adding in additional things that we need to. Do we need to then also add in a shared kitchen space? And do we have to have staff that we hire that's there 24/7 that lives in the property?
Correct. So that's the business side of it. It's not shared kitchen space. There's one kitchen. The caregivers who are 24/7 taking care of the residents, the seniors there, they're preparing the food and serving the food. So let's back up for a second. The real estate is the real estate. And then you have the business side, which means you have a manager. There's caregivers that take care of the residents. There may be independent contractors who do the maintenance on the home, as well as providing entertainment for the seniors. So all of that together is the business side of this. So whether you operate it or you hire out to somebody else to have them operate it, or you lease out your property, that's where you decide what level you're going to play. Is it going to be just the real estate? Is it going to be just the business? Or is it going to be both, like I do? You own the real estate and you own the business, and you're doing the whole thing, and that's where you're making that big, big money.
All right. Well, let's talk some downsides, which in a lot of ways sometimes is the government, right? Getting involved with regs and state regs and federal regulations. So what are you looking at? What, before you can even flip the switch, start getting seniors into this property, go through that hiring process, what needs to be in place, and who do you need to get verified from before you even get started on this?
Yeah. And I'm going to say it this way, Clayton. It's not as complicated as people think. There's barriers to entry. Most people aren't willing to do the work of what it takes in most anything that allows them to be successful. So having said that, there is no federal mandate or federal set of rules. It is state by state. Each location is going to have certain specific what you can and can't do. But from a state standpoint, I'm in Arizona, so we're limited to 10 seniors in that home. In Texas, it's 16 seniors in what's considered a small facility. So some states have a limit, some don't. Many states, over 20 of them in the US, there is no limit to how many seniors you can have in the home. So the home needs to be safe. That's number one. So senior safe, which is not ADA compliant. ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act, is to make a business place safe for people with disabilities so they can work there. Well, we don't have disabled workers. They're taking care of disabled people, if you will, elderly. So ADA compliance is not it, but senior safe. Grab bars near the toilets and showers, smoke detectors, maybe the fire suppression like we mentioned. We need a green tag. So that's one of the pieces, that a green tag, this home is senior safe. The second piece we need is policies and procedures. In most other businesses, they call it standard operating procedures. If this, then that. So everything from menus to schedules to moving people in to moving people out. The third piece is you need somebody who is the administrator, the manager, the facilitator, who, whatever they call it in your state, there's somebody that the state has said, here's the minimum qualifications for that person. So in some states, it's 18 years old, a GED, and a 24-hour course. In other states, it's 104 hours of training just to be a caregiver, another 40 hours of training to be a manager, and then 2 years of experience to have that qualification. So every state's a little different. And when we do our training, we teach people, depending on your state, here's what you do and how you do it. It's not as complicated as it sounds when you first hear it, but the reality is it's a licensed business. You need to have policies and procedures, a safe house, and you need to have the properly trained staff or manager.
When you're acquiring these properties, and I imagine costs are all over the board, you could be in Arizona, maybe a $300,000 property, Florida, $200,000 property. How are your students acquiring these properties? Because it's going to require some construction. So are they able to get traditional financing? Are they doing a construction loan? Or are they just coming out of pocket in cash and doing it that way?
A lot of the homes, and again, I want to make sure to set expectations for all your listeners there, the concept of what does it cost? The homes that I have are anywhere from 500,000 to $1,200,000. In Florida, I wouldn't look at a $200,000 house. I'd rather you be in Boynton Beach where it's $800,000. So I want to
Gotcha.
make sure we understand
Yeah, no, that's good.
the price. Yeah. And then from a financing standpoint, it's residential, it's non-owner occupied. So you can get Fannie and Freddie for 80% typically for non-owner occupied properties. If it is converted already, you're buying an existing home that's already being used as this residential assisted living home or whatever they call it in your state. You mentioned Florida, they call it assisted living facilities. That's what it's called in a residential setting in Florida. But whatever it's called, if it's already converted, there's a license on the wall, there's grab bars, and there's 10 seniors there, the bank is not going to typically refinance that. So other sources of financing, if you're doing it from inception, you're buying the house, you can Fannie and Freddie or any other type of residential non-owner occupied loan, that style. If you want construction money, so the ability to borrow money for the construction, there's programs for that, just like any property. The big difference is you may be doing some things that don't add, quote unquote, to the value of the house. When I say that, what I mean, you take a 4-car garage and convert that into bedrooms, you just added a whole bunch of living space to the house, but you also took away a 4-car garage.
Right.
So we have a plus on the real estate side from the square footage, but a minus because we no longer have a garage. So we have to really think that through. But you can borrow money from the bank. You can use to acquire. There's all kinds of ways, but let's go differently. SBA, Small Business Administration, USDA, which there's a ton of loans available there. There's also all the new programs that now they're talking about with the benefits that are out there of opportunity zones and so on. But we use a lot of private lenders and investors. We do a lot of syndication. We do a lot of raising of capital. And I'll be blunt, this is the easiest thing I personally have ever raised capital for, because when people hear about the rates of return, it's backed by real estate, yet it's this massive business with this customer flow that is unending and just continues to come. Raising the capital is not the complicated part at all.
So what would you say a net return on investment on one of your properties looks like for you?
For an ROI standpoint, if you're really just looking at, I paid $500,000 for the house, the reno and the startup cost and so on, that property should be netting you that $10,000, $15,000 a month. So when you think about 500,000 and I'm making 120, that's the kind of rate of return, that mid-20s right there. If you leverage, which I highly recommend you do, you borrow 300 of that, then you either put up the other 200. Now, instead of making 120, you're making less than that, but now you might be making 100% return cash on cash. If you do 100% financing, which is what I typically do, then obviously your return is infinite because you've used somebody else's money for the entire deal.
Great stuff. Well, we've just sort of scratched the surface on all of this.
Yeah.
I guess one downside I kind of see is you mentioned the conversion of like the garage, right? You're converting this property. It sounds like a lot of work. You're making it. I've certainly come across properties that I've dealt with before where I've had to pass on them because they have been converted in such a way that just didn't suit my needs at the time. So an exit strategy for these types of properties, is this something you're holding in perpetuity, or is it an easy fix to get it converted back over to a single family that would be usable by just a normal 3-kid, mom and dad family?
Sure. And I'm smiling because, you just said something that everybody else, I want to make sure they heard what you said. There was a house that didn't fit my criteria. Maybe the garage was converted. Maybe there was all the bathtubs are taken out as walk-in or roll-in showers, and there's smoke detectors around. You're like, this thing is crazy. Pause. No, that was perfect. Somebody put 50 or 100 grand into it. And instead of tearing that all out to rent it out to a family for $1,000, that home could have been generating $10,000 in net income, or leasing it to an operator for twice the market rent because you had all that stuff done. So the concept of what would I have to do to bring it back to, I don't think you should ever go backwards. If the work has been done to that property, it's going to be a group home of some kind for somebody in the future. But let me switch it a little bit. If you create this business inside this home, you bought the home, it's in the right location, you've done the right renovations to it and so on, and it's an operating business, there's a huge market for that. People that want to buy that. So the real estate can be sold, and the business also is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, can be sold. So your exit plan is to sell that to another operator.
I love that. Great answer, because something we haven't talked a lot about here on the show, it's something we're going to be talking more about here going forward, which is, the buying and selling of businesses. So here you go, right? You're able to sell this business, this performing business, the same way you'd sell a McDonald's franchise, right? Where you've got a 30 or 50 times multiplier. Someone's going to come and look at that property. It's generating this per year. I'll pay you 30 times that amount as a multiplier to sell this business. And that's
well, I want to. All right, just to make sure we understand, because I always want to give proper expectations. This is not a tech business, so the concept of what would that be worth, you take the net income each month, and it might be worth the annual net income times 2 or 3, but not 30 for sure. 30. It's a service business, so
right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, exactly. You might be selling an internet business with a 30 or 50 times multiplier. You built an iPhone application. You might do it that way. But 2 or 3 times multiplier annual return. That's still a great business.
That would be a reasonable number.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Gene, like I said, we've just barely scratched the surface. I'd love to have you come back on. We could talk some advanced strategies for senior assisted living centers and how people can dive deeper into that. In the meantime, though, I encourage everyone to check out and take your free training. We have a link set up at morrisinvest.com/RAL. That's residential assisted living, RAL. So just go to that link, sign up for your free training, and start learning how to do all this. Like I said, I'm going to be deep diving some of this as well. Gene, thanks so much for joining us on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. And thanks to all of you for downloading and subscribing. This is the type of great content we try to bring to you on a weekly basis to try to help educate you to take action, become a real estate investor. There are a number of different ways to do it. And as you can see, I'm as giddy as like a school kid looking for toys at a toy store right now when I hear Gene's strategy, because I'd heard rumblings about this for years, how to convert these properties in this way. So awesome stuff. My thanks to Gene, and thanks to all of you for becoming a subscriber. We'll see you next time here on the show. Now go out there, take action, become a real estate investor, even if it's senior assisted living centers. Give it a try. We'll see you next time.